this place and that place. Like in the trip to Argentina, there are a lot of these barrios. At the end of the city, there's another 100,000 people who live like by the train tracks, and they power their lives by tapping into the power line that runs next to the train tracks. And they're dirt roads. I mean, they're streets, but they're dirt and open sewer and stuff. And you think, you know, something happens and everything falls down out there. Well, in the United States, you know, we have all these building codes and so forth, all these rules and regulations, but it expresses our care and concern for one another. So we don't cut corners because, yeah, nothing's going to happen. But if it does, oh, your heart breaks and you carry that pain with you as long as you draw breath. And we're not going to allow, we're going to try our best to not allow that to happen. So we continue wearing our masks until we're all vaccinated. We will continue to sanitize our hands, take our temperatures, sit close enough but far enough from each other so that we maintain our health. Now the other thing that I wanted to say, and this is another expression of care and commitment. I've had Doc Lewis sing and give his testimony at my congregation 9 times, in some places more than once. And the sound is always an issue until he sang at Harvest Church. And that's because I watch the screen and Carlos is attentive. You know, when Dave and Sue, they move on to the next slide, he's right there. If they go a little fast, he's right on top of it. And we thank you, Carlos. We thank God for you. And now, to a word that we're all familiar with, I hope. Let's hear the word of the Lord from the 15th chapter of John. Jesus is speaking and teaching. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He removes every branch in me that bears no fruit. Every branch that bears fruit, he prunes to make it bear more fruit. You have already been cleansed by the word that I have spoken to you. Abide in me as I abide in you. Just as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit, because apart from me you can do nothing. Whoever does not abide in me is thrown away like a branch and withers. Such branches are gathered, thrown into the fire and burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. My Father is glorified by this, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples. Here ends the reading of God's word. Thanks and praise be to God for it. And one of the wonderful things about being a pastor and a preacher in the Central Valley of California is that I don't have to translate on vines and branches. How many of you have never seen a grapevine before? We get this. You know, it resonates deeply within some of us, and all of us have a sense of what Jesus is talking about. So today's sermon can be short, but maybe not. Well, I haven't preached for 2 weeks. So, yeah. No, but seriously though, there's no need for translation, thank God. And the point of all of this is to remind us to abide in Jesus.
This was the verse I read today.
Many times we get distracted. We get captured by an issue and we beat that drum. Oh, hungry people, we gotta feed them, we gotta feed them. Why do we need to feed hungry because Jesus said so. Why do we visit those in prison, or visit the sick, or visit the lonely, or clothe the naked, or care for the widows and orphans? Why do we do that? Because those who abide in Jesus do that kind of thing. We don't do it because we're good people. We do it because we are connected to the vine. One of the most powerful images in my life was walking around, on my first couple of trips to Armenia, I'd get up in the morning and walk through these empty streets. They aren't empty anymore. Traffic picks up around 8:30. It used to be you could walk down the middle of an avenue by 9:45 and you'd be fine. Now, traffic could start at 10. Now it starts 8:30. And we praise God for that, for the folks that live there. But I'd gone into, the inside courtyard of an apartment building, very European, the stores on the front, on the first level, and then apartments above, and then you walk in through a big entryway, and there's a big courtyard parking lot, and there was a vine, and it was still bearing fruit, and it must have been this thick at the bottom. It was like a tree trunk. And that whole, everything had been built around that vine. And that moves me to think that's what the church should be about. Harvest and its previous iteration, back when it was first present here, has been around here for a long, long time. But it's been pruned time and time again, hasn't it? And it continues to bear fruit. And our expectation is that there's going to be a bountiful harvest in the very near future. Because we're hearing God say that to us step by step. Each step that we've taken in the past 6 months or so has been blessed, has been good. The pastoral nominating committee has received all sorts of resumes from all over the country. And there's one that's sung. And that person heard harvest singing. And that person's spouse and child were as enthusiastic as dad and husband. They were, oh, this is so wonderful. And what a blessing that is. We're seeing fruit born. We hear another bit of good news. The house was sold. Although these days that's not a big deal. You put your house up for sale, it'll sell real quick too. No matter, one of the things, my mom gets these postcards in the mail. We hear you want to sell your house. She calls me up. Have you been doing something? Because my mom wants to stay in her house. I say, no, Mom, this happens to everybody. People want houses that need a little work, a little updating, a little freshening, and your house qualifies for that. And so you're going to get these postcards, and I have nothing to do with it. We're going to keep you here as long as we can. So, we have a vine and we have branches. First of all, the branch has to remain connected to the vine, or else it's of no use. You know that better than I do. I'm not in ag, never have been. I don't like landscaping. My biggest garden thing is I stick rosemary and dill and oregano and thyme and basil in the ground, and sometimes I get to harvest a little bit when I cook with that stuff. A lot of times the stuff dies. I have a thumb that does all sorts of things except show green, and that's okay. But I do know that if you cut the branch from the vine and leave it floating in the air or on a piece of concrete, it's not going to produce any fruit. One thing in Fresno, though, is if you drop it on the ground, it may start growing again on its own. I'm amazed on how fertile things are around here. One time someone had dug a hole, and taken the grass and stuck it, dug it out, put it over here, and was working on a sprinkler system, and then left and didn't come back for 3 days. And then when he got to move the grass back. When he had finished his work, he was going to move the grass back, and it had grown and stuck into the ground right where it had been laid in like 3 or 4 days. The branch must remain connected. The other thing the branch does, it only produces the fruit for that vine or for that tree. The vine, a grapevine, in a particular type of grape, a muscat vine doesn't produce Thompson grapes, does it? No. It just produces whatever the vine says to produce. And then the other thing is, and this is important for us, because many times we get full of ourselves. We keep hearing stories of pastors who engage in misconduct of many types. And it's not because they're evil people, it's because they're sinners and they get pretty full of themselves. I'm special. Right? You get that feeling. The branches get pruned every year. I love driving around this valley in all the different seasons, because if you live in the city, green is one color. If you live in this valley, you know 30, 40, 50 shades of green, don't you? There's the green of the initial springtime. Then there's the green of late spring. Then there's that deep, dark, you know, it's a dense kind of green. And then there's the green just before you get the brown. And I don't know how to describe that color, but there's great variety. And then the branch is pruned so that next year there may be good and brown, bountiful fruit. How many pastors have stood where I stand? In the past 2 years, there's been at least 4 of us who have had the title of pastor, interim pastor, and then before that there was somebody, and before that there was somebody, and before that there was somebody. And we all tried to be faithful, but we were very different from one another. And the one who's coming to be up here is different than I am, certainly. I'm pretty sure he's not going to wear a suit every Sunday. Thank God for Bobby. To hold up the standards here at Harvard. But fruit is going to be born. The fruit that the vine insists to be born. The reason why I am dealing with this passage this week and wrestling with it is because of the kind of things that get in the way of quality fruit being born. I was at Costco this past week for the first time in a long time. And I was tempted to buy fruit. And I had promised myself, I'm never buying fruit from Costco again, years ago. Because you know Costco fruit. How many of you shop at Costco ever? Not enough. Well, there's maybe half of us. But that fruit looks so good. And you take it home, and you take a bite out of it, and it disappoints. Because you expect it to be incredibly delicious. It looks like that on the outside. It looks incredibly delicious. I know several packers in this valley, and I go visit them. I take, when friends come from out of town, I call my friend Kenny. I say, Kenny, can I bring my buddy over? He says, well, you know, well, I've been okay. You know, he gives me that. And he says, okay. So I take the person along, and they've got bags of fruit or, you know, boxes of fruit waiting for us. So, oh, look, this, you must be packing for Costco. It says, yep, that's the Costco line this morning. And 90% of the fruit that passes doesn't qualify. But there's the peach that's about this size and looks like a peach. It looks like a painting of the peach. They would have used that peach for the cover of, who is it in the giant peach? James? Yeah, they would have used it, but you bite into it and it's like there's nothing there. And so many times the church looks like that. It looks so good. Now, it's important that a church look good. It's important that a peach look good when it's at Save Mart, or at Pack and Save, or at Grocery Outlet, or what other places do we buy fruit here in Madera? Anywhere it's got to look good, because we have very high standards, visual standard. It's got to look good, but then it's also got to taste good. It's got to be to its very core, it's got to be a peach. It doesn't just have to be a peach on the outside. And some of the most delicious grapes we consume, when you look at the grapes that they use to make really exquisite wine, they don't look that good. But boy, when you treat them right, they're delicious, and they're also way too costly. Well, anyway, that was an aside. I got carried away there. But there really is that thing of, it looks good like the Pharisees. The Pharisees look good. But at their core, they had missed the point. They had no flavor. And part of the call to us is when we work at making ourselves look good, on whether it's the building or in our joyful and enthusiastic welcome to new ones who come into our life together, is that we retain our flavor. What is the distinct flavor of the branch that produces fruit at Harvest Community Church? It's not the same as the fruit that's produced at the Methodist Church down the street, or the Church of Christ, or the Assemblies Church across the way. All faithful congregations in their way. But what is distinct about it? Oh, we're so loving. You know, that's the bare minimum. As you read past, you complete this thought. Jesus says, as the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. I have said these things to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. Our basic minimum requirement is that love. It's the common thing in all the congregations that are on that street, Sunset out there, and everywhere in Madera, and everywhere in this Central Valley and throughout the world, as we celebrate the sacrament of Holy Communion this morning, and as we gather around this table, as millions of others do on the first Sunday of the month throughout the world, we are bound together. We express our connectedness, but each one of us has a distinct flavor. Just like there's more than 3 kinds of grapes in the world. There is a vine that has led to the giving fruit that just in the grape is 6,000 kinds. The other thing, and this is our chief sin, is we get it backwards. That the branch is what brings out stuff from the vine. Oh God, if you do this for me, if you heal me, I'll be in church every Sunday. Oh God, if you allow me to win the lottery, I'm going to give 10% to you. Come on now. If God can move in such a way to allow you to win the lottery, well, you think that same God would need you to give money to God to get God's work done? I figure God can do it without you or me. It is the great blessing to us, our great privilege, to be engaged in doing God's work, in bearing fruit from the vine that is Jesus Christ. So our call is to abide in him, to abide in him, to abide in him, to be in Jesus, to stay connected to Jesus, not only individually, but as this cluster of grapes on this branch that's connected to the vine, this branch that is Harvest Community Church, because the things we do together is amazing. I can't distribute 170 boxes of food. I can't afford it. But together, we're able to do it. And this is one of the most exciting things in a bittersweet way, is that every month we get 10 more boxes of stuff, 10 more portions to give out, and we keep finishing within the hour. So if part of the fruit you're going to bear this coming week is coming on Friday and helping distribute, it doesn't go from 10 to 1 o'clock to distribution. It goes from 10 to 11 o'clock, because people are lined up and we run out of food within the hour. It is amazing, it is exciting, but it's also heartbreaking that there's so much need in our community. So here we are. I am the vine, my Father is the wine grower, and we are the branches. It's something to take seriously, this thing of praying that God's will be done as we pray the Lord's Prayer. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Thy will be done in me, O Lord, that I produce the fruit that I have been created to produce, that I will fulfill my purpose. I will determine what goes on with the vine. The vine determines what goes on in me. I stay close, and maybe the fruit I produce is small. Maybe the fruit I produce is not very sweet. Maybe the fruit I produce is going to be needed in a particular way at a particular time, in a very specific and maybe in seemingly a small way. But that is what we have been called to be. And that is not only okay, that is absolutely right and faithful. There was a season in our life together. This past year is a good example of it. For so many churches in the world, their ministry seemed to shrink, and some people were not okay with it. We've got it, oh, everything's going up. Hey, this was a wonderful time for not only us, but for the church in the world to have a moment to catch its breath and to say, what is it? What is our purpose here? Is our purpose to gather in one place and sing real loud our praise of God? No, it's to live out that praise when you're at home, when you're in your neighborhood, to extend yourselves to people in ways that you haven't done before, because we know people are lonely, that people are needy, that people are desperately in need.